Well, hello, welcome to the Masterclass Optimal Nutrition System for Endurance Athletes. My name is Bob Seebohar. I am a performance dietitian, exercise physiologist, and endurance coach. Now, this optimal nutrition system is actually the system that I have created over the last 25 plus years, and it is the system that I use with every single endurance athlete that I have ever worked with and will ever work with. It works phenomenal on any endurance athlete, young, not so young, doesn't matter the sport. It could be running, it could be triathlon, it could be open water swimming, it could be trail running. Like it literally does not matter as long as it has an endurance component. I'm super excited to share this with you because a lot of athletes really question their nutrition quite a bit. And I get it, right? There are so many things floating around the internet these days, and you don't know who to believe. And certainly you don't know what little chunks of information to take from people. So what I've done is I've created a system. It is a very systematic way of teaching sport nutrition to endurance athletes. So it's not a compilation of this and that and pieces and parts. This is literally a system. So what I would challenge you as you put it into your life, follow the system, follow it in the stages as I present it, and it will work wonders for you no matter what your goals are. It can be health related, it can be performance related, longevity related, whatever it is. So let's go ahead, let's dive in and get started. So here it is in a graphic representation. This is my optimal nutrition system that I want to share with you. So we're going to start at the bottom, right? The bottom is always foundation nutrition. And you can think of this as your daily nutrition, your snacking, whatever you do during the day that is not within your exercise or training window. Now, we're going to talk about a few things, right? Metabolic efficiency training, nutrition periodization. We'll also hit physiological and biomarker testing. Then the next part of the system is looking at your nutrient timing strategies. And that is what you're doing with nutrition, with fluids, electrolytes, before, during, and after your training sessions and competitions. And then the last piece of the system is supplementation, right? We want to make sure for everyone that they're safe, they're legal, and they work, right? We don't want to be pouring money into supplements that actually don't work. So let's go ahead and just start with the bottom first, the foundation nutrition. So let me explain this in another wonderful graphic representation. I love teaching on visuals because I'm very much a visual learner. Hopefully you are too. So at the bottom of everything that we talk about when it comes to nutrition is what is called nutrition periodization. So this is a concept that I created in the early 2000s. And I won't bore you with those details of why I created it, but I will tell you this is what nutrition periodization is. It is nutrition that supports your training efforts and training cycles. It's as easy as that. For example, maybe you're in base training, so you have low volume, low intensity. Well, your daily nutrition should support that. But what happens as you progress through your base training and now you start to add volume, maybe you sprinkle some intensity, and maybe you move to the next training cycle, which is usually a build cycle or competition cycle where you have more intensity. You have some repeats, you have some intervals, you have some sprints. Well, the body needs different nutrients to support the different physiological adaptation responses that you are looking for. And then fast forward to your off season or your out season. Maybe you're not doing a lot. Well, guess what? Your daily nutrition has to support that also. So nutrition periodization is simply manipulating your daily nutrition, your macronutrients, your micronutrients, to support whatever physical training you are doing at that time. And it's beautiful because endurance athletes, we all go through different training cycles. And that's the easiest way to think about it, right? Base training or preparatory is one cycle. And then we've got that build or competition cycle where usually energy expenditure, the amount of calories you're burning, are a little bit higher, a little more stress on the body. Then we've got the off season or out season where the stress is a little bit lower, right? So if you think about it that way, it's much easier to navigate how to periodize your nutrition to support your physical training needs. Now that's the baseline, that's the foundation of everything. But now we start looking at specific nutrition alterations. If you look at this as a bell-shaped curve, as I've presented here, you can see there are always outliers in the nutrition world. And the outliers usually represent about 1 or 2%, right? And these are the athletes that you see, maybe training partners, buddies, whatever, and you're like, wow, how does he or she do that? How do they eat like that? But I can't and have the same responses. Of course not, because we are all individual. We come from different genetics, right? So with that said, there will always be these outliers, and that's fine, right? So the outliers here on the left side, what you see are our low carbohydrate, high fat, or LCHF diets, our ketogenic diets, and then any other diet, right? Could be carnivore, could be paleo, anything like that. On the other side of it, so on the left side, we're restricting carbohydrates. On the right side, we're not restricting carbohydrates. That's the HCLF. That's the high carbohydrate, low fat dieting or eating plans. Now, that's like the traditional, what most endurance athletes have done in the past. And if you do that, I might just convince you that that might not be the best all the time. Okay, so stay with me here. So we've got the two outliers. We know that some people will fall into that, but the majority of us want to focus in the middle. And the middle is what is called metabolic efficiency training. Metabolic efficiency training, as I will explain in the next few slides, is what you want to practice every single day of your life because it is basically using food to support optimal blood sugar levels. And I'll explain why that's so important here in a second. But from a metabolic efficiency training perspective, if you look at it like an equation, metabolic efficiency equals 75% daily and training nutrition plus 25% exercise. And what that means is the majority of improving your blood sugar is going to come from your food throughout the day and surrounding your training nutrition. 25% of that is going to come from aerobic exercise. Now, I'm not going to talk about aerobic exercise that much at all, right? If you're an endurance athlete and you have a coach, he or she is guiding you in that, right? If you do have questions about that, you can email me a little bit later. But what I want to focus on is the majority of improving your body's ability to use the stores that it has in it. Now, here's the thing. We store carbohydrates and fat in our body. We don't store protein as protein. When we eat protein, it becomes denatured, it breaks down, and it actually breaks down into amino acids. There are 20 amino acids. These things float around your body and kind of help out wherever they need it, right? But we don't store them as protein. We do store fat and we do store carbohydrate. Now, here's the thing you need to remember. We don't store a lot of carbohydrates. In fact, most adults will have anywhere between about 1,200 calories to 2,000 calories worth of carbohydrates stored in their muscles, liver, and blood at any given time. And that amount is less for small, petite females and more for larger males because it is most of the carbohydrate we store is in our muscle. So the larger you are with more muscle mass, the more carbohydrates you're going to store. Now contrast that with fat stores. The average adult can store upwards of 80,000 calories as fat. Let me just remind you one more time how many calories we store as carbohydrate, 1,200 to 2,000. But yet we store roughly 80,000 or more calories as fat. Ah, interesting. We're going to talk about this a little bit. So just keep that in mind as we go along here. Okay, so why metabolic efficiency training? Well, besides the fact that it is not a diet, you're not going to have shackles like diet handcuffs on, right? You don't have to calorie count. You don't have to measure anything. I mean, you can if you want, but that's not part of what metabolic efficiency training is from the nutrition perspective, right? I'll teach you this here in a second. But these are some potential benefits of using this concept to optimize blood sugar. So anything from affecting your body weight, body composition, improving cognitive functioning, so focus, concentration, your mood, right? It could also improve your satiety, so you stay fuller longer, which could help with weight loss. Give you daily or better daily energy. So now you don't have those slumps in the afternoon. That's a huge sign, by the way, that you are not controlling your blood sugar. If you have that 1 to 4 p.m. slump where you think you need sugar or caffeine, that's an easy fix for the most part, right? That is you're just not putting the right food together to control blood sugar, right? It can improve sleep. It can reduce your food cravings. And from a health perspective, it can reduce fasting blood sugar. It can reduce this thing called HbA1c, which is a 3-month average of your fasting blood sugar. And yes, optimizing blood sugar is related to decreasing the risk for some chronic disease states. So this is the real deal. This isn't just performance, right? We're talking health first. You've got to improve your health before you improve your performance. So a lot of potential benefits of using this concept. Now, let me explain a little of the science behind it, okay? We've got 2 lines here that I've showed you. One is a very unhappy blood sugar line. That's the blue line. That's the one that looks like a roller coaster. And the other one is the red dotted line. That's the happy blood sugar line. That's the one that where you don't see a lot of peaks and valleys, just a little bit of aberrations here and there, but it's kind of like gently rolling waves in the ocean versus these huge tidal waves, right? So we want to promote more of a happy blood sugar line. And why is that? Well, if you don't put food together properly, which I will teach you how to do here in 1 second, you're going to constantly create these blood sugar spikes, that unhappy blood sugar line. Now, with these spikes, it's not a good thing throughout the day to have those most of the time. And you can see the repercussion of blood sugar spikes. You can read below, right? That's short-lived energy, right? That is going to reduce your mental and physical performance at certain times throughout the day. It's going to hit your cognitive functioning. It's going to hit your body's ability to perform, but also recover. And it can have a negative effect on body weight and body composition goals. So keep this in mind. Here's the science part of it. Whenever your blood sugar is high, that stimulates a message. It kind of sends a message to this organ called the pancreas in your body. Now, the pancreas stores insulin. When blood sugar is high, insulin will be released from the pancreas. It'll come out, it'll do one of its jobs, which is to reduce blood sugar, and then everything is great again, right? Fantastic. But 2 things here. The first thing, when blood sugar is high, and therefore insulin is high, there is a cascade of biochemical events that happen. Insulin is high, and that just about turns off your body's ability to burn its fat stores. That can have health implications because think about it. You can actually eat 1 or 2 different ways and it can affect your body differently. For example, remember the bell-shaped curve I presented? If you have too many carbohydrates relative to protein and fat, that will stimulate high blood sugar, will release more insulin, and encourage your body to store fat while it's burning more carbohydrates. But remember, again, we don't store a lot of carbohydrates, so you're going to be burning through your stores pretty quickly. And oh, by the way, I didn't tell you, the stores of carbohydrate you have, the 1,200 to 2,000 calories, that's only going to give you enough energy to help you sustain roughly 2 hours worth of exercise. It's not a lot. So what we mostly want to do is encourage a dietary shift where we control blood sugar, we control insulin, we encourage our body to actually use more of our fat stores as energy and preserve our carbohydrate stores. Carbohydrate stores are very limited. We want to preserve those as much as possible. We have almost unlimited fat stores, and we want to encourage the oxidation or the burning or the use of those for energy. And the way that we do that is through combining food. There are no like special, like, oh, you need to eat this food and that food. No, it's not about that. It's about putting the foods that you enjoy together in the right ratios. And that's what I'm going to teach you here. When we look at using food to optimize blood sugar, we're looking at 3 things. Step 1, choose your protein. It can be animal-based, it could be plant-based, okay? Everything goes around protein. So protein first, and then you're going to add your fiber. You're going to add your colorful fruits and vegetables, maybe some whole grains and starches, beans, seeds, nuts, right? You're going to add fiber because fiber, which comes from carbohydrates, helps control blood sugar. So protein and fiber together are amazing for optimizing your blood sugar. Now, step 3 is adding fat. So you want to add those really good oils, the nuts, the nut butters, the avocados, all those great things, right? Because fat not only is necessary for every single cell in your body, including the brain, but it also helps keep you fuller longer. So when we're looking about using food to supply energy to the body and the brain and sustain the energy and optimize the blood sugar, 3 easy steps: protein, fiber, fat. Now, a little bit more into this. This is the ratio I was talking about. So CHO is carbohydrate. PRO is protein. There is a certain carbohydrate to protein ratio that exists that will optimize blood sugar differently. Now, the reason why fat is not in this ratio or this equation is because the assumption is if you are not a plant-based eater, so if you're an omnivore and you eat animal proteins, the fat will come from your animal-based protein. So if you eat chicken, if you eat fish, if you eat beef, dairy products, right? The fat should be in there. Now, if you are a plant-based endurance athlete, you actually might need to seek out a little bit more fat, like the oils, like the nut butters, like the avocado, because some of your protein sources may be relatively lower in fats. And remember, we still need fat, but I digress. This whole carbohydrate to protein ratio, this is what I need to teach you. So as you can see, the left column is carbohydrate, middle column is protein, last column on the right is blood sugar outcome. So what outcome do we want? Well, we kind of want like that very good, good, maybe even okay, right? Let me explain these. So I usually speak of these I've developed this model called the hand model. And it's basically just using your hands, wrist to fingertips, right? Entire hand, to simplify the process so you don't have to count calories. So when we're looking at this, we're looking at, and let me just step back. There's wiggle room, right? Listen, if you count calories and you measure, there is still error in that. If you want to have a discussion with me offline, just shoot me an email. I'd be happy to engage with you there. But let me just say this. There is error in everything. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to simplify this, right? I firmly believe simple is sustainable. So we're gonna use some wiggle room. We're gonna use the hands. And let me explain this to you. When you eat, you can choose different ratios of carbohydrate to protein, right? So that one hand of carbs, fruit, veggies, whole grains, beans, nuts, seeds, whatever, and one hand of protein, if you eat relatively about the same amounts of those are going to give you an ideal or very good blood sugar response, right? You're not going to have those spikes. But please hear this. This usually does not provide you a lot of calories because you will stay so full for so long. So I really encourage you to be careful with this 1-to-1 ratio. I don't believe it ever belongs in a build training phase or training cycle. Maybe off season, maybe like the early stages of base or prep season for sure, but definitely not when your body needs more calories and more energy because you're expending more, right? Now, going down the list, the 2-to-1 ratio, 2 hands of carbs to 1 hand of protein. That's honestly where I start most people, depending on their health and performance goals. But that is that will elicit solid blood sugar. It's very good. It's easy to do. It'll give you the right amount of carbohydrates you need. Super, super simple. When we surpass that 2-to-1, once we start getting into that 3-to-1, so 3 hands of carbs to 1 hand of protein, it gets a little bit wonky, right? So now it's okay blood sugar, but it's not the greatest. But, I wouldn't do that all the time, but maybe you do that specifically, like maybe after certain workouts, if you want to rush carbohydrates coming back in. That's when, like, I'll use that 3-to-1 ratio if an athlete wants to fill up their carbohydrate gas tank, right, pretty quickly, right? So there's a time and a place for these. And that 4-to-1, That's not so good. That's going to destroy your blood sugar. Again, there's a time and a place for all of these, but from a daily eating perspective, I think most of the time the sweet spot is going to sit somewhere between that 1-to-1 and 3-to-1, depending on your training cycle. Remember that nutrition periodization foundation? We want to periodize this carbohydrate to protein ratio. So keep that in mind. But this will start you off fantastic, right? Think about protein, fiber, fat. Then you want to think about volume-wise using this carbohydrate to protein ratio. Super simple, super easy. Again, a little bit of wiggle room, but don't feel like you have to count anything or measure anything. All right, the second part of this foundation nutrition is actually getting some testing done. And I call this popping the hood. You want to learn more about your body because guess what? As a sport dietitian, I customize athletes' daily nutrition plans and even nutrient timing plans based on some testing data. So there's so many biomarker tests, right? So many. These are just the more popular ones that I do with athletes, but there are a lot that exist. Just keep that in mind, right? The first one is super easy, blood work testing. Super easy. However, what I find is a lot of athletes who go to their physicians, the physicians aren't doing a complete panel. It's not comprehensive. It's just the basic stuff. So you as an endurance athlete, male, female, young, not so young, master's age, you may need different markers, biomarkers to be tested. And there are a host of them that should be tested on a regular basis that are not being tested. And, just as an example, vitamin D, folate, vitamin B12, full iron panel, cholesterol panel, not just the basic cholesterol, but particle size. So there's a lot of these biomarkers that need to be tested, but you should probably make sure that you know which ones those are first before going to your physician. Now, the second one is called omega-3 index testing. Now, omega-3 fats, you may have heard of these before, fish oil, right? These are very important inside your body because they help decrease inflammation. Now, inflammation is the precursor to many chronic diseases, and as athletes, it can actually slow or speed up our recovery process. So we want to make sure that we have low inflammation in our body. The only way you know that, honestly, is to have omega-3 index testing. Now, this is probably the easiest test you can have done, this and genomics, right? Because literally it's an at-home test. You do like a little finger prick, put a little drop of blood on this card, send it in, voila. The great thing about this omega-3 index test is it helps you create different nutrition plans surrounding different fatty acids like omega-3 fats, omega-6 fats, right? So, and if you take fish oil supplements, it can actually help you determine how much you should take based on your current nutrition or food intake. Okay, phenomenal test. And the last one that's getting a lot more popular these days is called genomics or nutrigenomics. And that is basically looking at how your genes interact based on the food that you're feeding your body, right? So it's kind of that genetic influence of food. And as an example, I always love giving this example. Let's say we're talking about vitamin D, right? Everybody knows how important vitamin D is, but maybe you have what we call spelling error on one of your vitamin D pathways, your gene pathways, that affects you using the sun hitting your skin to synthesize vitamin D. And in fact, I have that personally, right? My body has a spelling error on that, so I don't synthesize vitamin D too well from sunshine. So I have to make sure I'm eating proper vitamin D rich foods, of which that's very difficult to do, by the way, and or have the right supplementation of vitamin D on a daily basis. So biomarker testing, again, there are a host of different ones. These are probably my top three that I recommend to all endurance athletes when I first start working with them. Now, the other type of testing, if you haven't heard of this before, is metabolic efficiency testing. So remember when I was talking about metabolic efficiency training, and that is basically using food to optimize your blood sugar. Well, this is the testing protocol. And by the way, did I mention, I don't think I did, I actually created the metabolic efficiency training concept right after I created the nutrition periodization concept, right? And again, I won't bore you with the backstory on that, but the testing component, I put on my physiologist hat because I wanted a way to validate the nutrition changes in an athlete's daily nutrition plan. And that's what this testing does. So as you can see from the photo, you would walk, run on a treadmill or cycle on a bike, and you wear a mask because this piece of technology called a metabolic cart collects all the air that you breathe, your oxygen and your carbon dioxide, and it analyzes how well your body uses your stored fat and your stored carbohydrate. And that's what you can see from this basic graph on the left, right? So this is basically an association between how well your body is oxidizing or burning fat, and that's the red line you can see, versus carbohydrate, which is the blue line. Now, this is what you see here as like a textbook metabolic efficiency graph, right? That doesn't have, this maybe happens in 40% of people or athletes that I've tested, and data concludes that too. Now, when we look at that, you can see where they cross, right? That's called your metabolic efficiency point. There is going to be some type of intensity, exercise intensity, where your body says, hey, I need more carbohydrate because the intensity is getting too hard and I can't use my fat anymore to supply as much energy as my body needs. That's what we look for in that testing, because once we find that, we can determine a whole bunch of things like how many calories per hour you should eat during exercise, what those calories should consist of, and more importantly, we can determine how you need to change your daily nutrition plan to elicit either improved fat burning responses or improved carbohydrate burning responses. Remember what I said earlier, you can teach your body one or the other. It just depends on what your goals are, right? All right, so second tier of the pyramid of this optimal nutrition system that I've developed is nutrient timing. Now, with this, here's what I'm going to tell you. There are two different strategies of nutrient timing. Not many people know that because most people just talk about what's always in the press and always in the research, and that's called glycogen maximization, right? I'm going to tell you this though. Nutrient timing gets very, very confusing and very specific because we're looking at different nutrients. So not only are we looking at before training, during and after training, as you can see, and before training is defined as anywhere between 30 minutes to 3 hours before, and during training is anywhere about 60 minutes or more, and then after training can be either immediately afterwards or about 1 to 2 hours afterwards, right? But here's the thing to note. When we talk about nutrient timing, there are 5 nutrients that we always discuss: fluid, carbohydrate, protein, fat, and sodium. Okay, keep that in mind. Now, I'm not going to present these charts because that would be about another 3-hour masterclass, but I'm going to tell you there are 2 purposes or strategies of nutrient timing. So let me just talk about those briefly. The first one is the glycogen maximization, like I mentioned, right? That is what you hear from the research, from the press, from people talking on the street, your coaches, your training partners, everybody, right? That is trying to get carbohydrates in your body and enough carbohydrates in your body at the right time, at the right amounts to supply your energy needs during exercise. Now, that is firmly for performance, right? So think about this. If you've heard, and this is the more popular one, if you've heard that during training, you should consume between 30 and 120 grams of carbohydrate, that's what I'm talking about here, right? The glycogen maximization, putting a lot of carbs into the body. Now, the other purpose or the other strategy is metabolic efficiency. So this is where, like we've been talking about, right? How do we control blood sugar? How do we teach the body to burn fat, preserve carbohydrate? If that is your goal, then there is a specific nutrient timing strategy that I have created around metabolic efficiency, and it basically improves your fat adaptation response. So the beautiful thing here is that there are 2 different strategies you can use with nutrient timing. Sometimes we actually use both concurrently, but guess what? It all depends on what your goals are at the end of the day, okay? So keep that in mind. Normally, now this is normal, but there's nothing normal about like our N of 1 experiments and athletes, right? Every athlete is different, but I will say like normally I usually implement more of a metabolic efficiency nutrient timing system earlier in an athlete's year, like in that base prep season. And then about midway to halfway through, we start kind of transitioning into that performance glycogen maximization. But here's the thing, totally depends on you and the athlete, right? So, for example, maybe you are an ultra runner who competes in 100 or 200-mile races. Well, that fat adaptation, that metabolic efficiency nutrient timing system is probably going to be the one for you continuously. But maybe you're a triathlete and you're doing more Olympic distance or half Ironman where intensity is a little bit higher. Maybe you need more carbohydrates at certain times. Maybe that's where the glycogen maximization nutrient timing strategy comes from. So we really need to kind of pick this. There's no right or wrong here. And that's the beautiful thing about this. You can use one or both depending on your needs. That's the key to remember with nutrient timing. Okay, last tier in my optimal nutrition system is supplements. Oh my gosh. Nutrition can be confusing, don't get me wrong, but supplements, way confusing, like the most confusing, I believe, because there are so many what ifs. Now, I will say this, before you choose to supplement with anything, I would definitely get some blood work testing done, right? The omega-3 index testing, the blood work, biomarker testing, absolutely necessary, because here's the thing. Some supplements, such as like B vitamins, vitamin B12, folate specifically, vitamin D, iron, those you do not want to supplement until you know your levels. Like if an athlete comes up to me and says, Bob, I think I need to take vitamin D, I will never recommend vitamin D unless I have blood work showing me the level or the value of vitamin D in their body, because we don't want to, we don't want to overdose anything in our body, right? But we also want to make sure we're being smart with our body, because sometimes we can achieve some of this supplement need through food. Sometimes we can't. It kind of depends on levels, and you don't know your levels until you have them tested, right? Test, don't guess. So that's my precursor to this. Other supplements, you may not need to have blood work testing done, but there are appropriate doses for every single supplement. You don't want to just say, hey, I take fish oil. Well, great. How much? If you don't know, again, you're not effectively using that supplement. So keep that in mind before we begin this discussion. Now, there are 3 categories of supplements that I teach athletes, and this makes it super easy, like super easy to understand supplements. If you just remember to separate supplements into 3 categories, the first one is micronutrients or health supplements, right? And these are things like your multivitamin, iron, zinc, probiotics, calcium, your omega-3 fats, your fish oil, your vitamin D, like those. Usually we take those micronutrients for health purposes. Not all the time, but most of the time, okay? The second category are sports supplements, exercise supplements, and those are things as endurance athletes we're very privy to. These are our gels, our powders, our sport drinks, our gummies, our bars, our electrolyte powders, our protein powders. I mean, you name it, that recovery powders, right? This is what we're used to, but we usually only need these during hard training. So again, look at your training cycles, training, nutrition, periodization. And remember, probably somewhere, again, depending on the periodization you're going through with your training, probably somewhere mid-base training, all the way through competition season. You certainly don't need many of these during your recovery or your off-season, out-season. There's a time and a place for these, right? Use those wisely. And then lastly, this is kind of the interesting one. The one that I get most questions about are the ergogenic aids. Now, ergogenic means performance enhancing. Okay, keep that in mind. So these are the things, I've only listed the ones down here that have had decent research to actually support their usage. There's about 1,000 more ergogenic aids out there, but not a lot of them actually have a lot of good research where I'm comfortable enough to say, you know what, that might make a difference in your sport, in your performance. So these are ones like creatine, beta-alanine, Caffeine is a hugely popular one, sodium bicarbonate, and nitrates, right? Those are probably top five that usually get my attention when we're talking about how do we use certain things to improve athletic performance. Okay. Now, again, time and place for all of these. You want to make sure that you are directed by some qualified professional, biasly, I would say a sport dietitian who knows endurance athletes, right? They will be able to help you, guide you on your path to which supplements are necessary based on your health goals, your longevity goals, and your athletic performance related goals. Now, before we leave supplements, I do want to mention this. I am a huge fan of all supplements being third-party tested. And what does that mean? That means that supplements that you buy provide their supplement product and they give it to one of these three agencies and companies that you see. So either NSF certified for sport, Informed Sport certified, or Banned Substances Control Group. Those are the three top companies in the world that take product company supplements, test them for contaminants, banned substances, heavy metals, like everything. It basically says, hey, you know what? What's in the bottle is actually in there, and there's nothing crazy in them that will affect your health or performance or anything. You want to try to look for as many supplements that you can take with a third-party testing certification. Now, why? You may be thinking, oh, I'm just an age group athlete, whatever. No. Like a lot of times you buy supplement, like there's so many studies out there to say this. You buy supplements just like at your grocery store and everything, you're not going to get the high quality. You might not even get the right amounts of magnesium or iron or whatever you're getting off the shelf, right? If it's not tested by a third party, you don't know exactly. You can't validate it. You don't know how credible that is until it's tested. So I would look for one of these three logos, and usually it's super easy because you can pick up your supplement bottle, container, bag, box, whatever. And if a company submits their supplements to one of these three companies for supplement testing, it will have the logo on the package. That's the easiest way to know. If it doesn't have the logo on the package, maybe think twice, okay? Now, the reason why you will always find the logo on the package, just FYI, is because it costs a lot of money for these companies to submit their supplements to these testing agencies, right? They're spending the money because they want to make sure that what they sell to us, the consumer, is actually good, not high quality. It's credible, no junk in there, right? So they're spending the money on that. And here's the thing. You've heard the saying, like, you get what you pay for. You certainly do in the supplement world. Like, I would not shy away from paying a little bit more for a supplement that has one of these certifications versus one that doesn't. In fact, I try to make 100% of the supplements that I have, I either know that they're supplement tested by one of these companies, or I have personally literally visited the manufacturing facility of companies to look at their quality standards and their certificate of analyses, and I want to look at their manufacturing. And that's when I can trust them if they don't provide this third-party testing. Just a good rule of thumb with supplements. Now, this has provided you my optimal nutrition system. Obviously, there's a lot of fill in the blanks, right? This is a masterclass. I can't give you everything because it's general versus individual. But obviously, as an endurance athlete, you never want to stop learning, right? Listen, I have never stopped learning, both as a practitioner, but also as an endurance athlete myself. Like what I did 20, 30 years ago is not what I'm doing these days because our bodies change, right? As we age, as we do different types of endurance sports, different distances. So never stop learning. Keep your finger on the pulse. Again, it's kind of tough to know what's true out there, what's not true. I get that. I totally get that. But please never stop learning. I do have a few resources for you if you're interested in continuing your learning. The first is the adjunct to what I've been talking about. I put my optimal nutrition system for endurance athletes, what I just talked to you about. I actually expanded this into an online course. So I go into so much detail for every three or each of the three tiers. Remember the foundation eating, the nutrient timing, the supplements. So much information in there. So for example, I will teach you how to navigate your daily nutrition. I will teach you all about nutrient timing and when to do what, when to have these carbs, how much fluid, how much sodium, right? I will literally take you hand in hand through that. And then on the supplement side of it, I will actually show you the top supplements that I recommend for endurance athletes. I will show you where to get them through food, and then I will show them or where you can get them through the proper supplements. So as a quick example, if we're talking about magnesium as a supplement, because I talk about this quite a bit with endurance athletes, there are many different types of magnesium, and they all have different effects in the body. So you want to make sure you're taking the right type of magnesium to elicit the response you want in your body. And I'll guide you through that also, right? So if you want more information, it's super easy. It's an incredible course. Of course, I'm biased because I did create it, but it's very reasonably priced. It's under $200. It's a self-study course. It's amazing, right? I'll just leave it at that. The next thing is if you're thinking, you know what? I want a little bit more help in this, then I actually have a little community that I developed. It's called the Metabolic Efficiency Transformation Community. It's an online community. It's for like-minded people who are trying to optimize their blood sugar through food. They're doing some endurance sports. They care about their health, longevity, aging, fitness, right? And what happens in this community is I provide master classes each month. I do a live Q&A, and I provide a ton of resources just to help guide you. But here's the great thing about the community is we all support each other. So you'll not only get my support, but all the community members' support too. And obviously you're seeing some QR codes up there. You can scan those QR codes, or certainly you can find all of this information on the Energy Performance website. Also, if you just go under courses and master classes. But hopefully this somewhat short, yes, this was short for how I usually present. Masterclass gives you a great idea of where to start with your nutrition, how to think about it in different tiers, like not just be like, oh, I'll throw some spaghetti at the wall, see what sticks, like systematically follow the tiers, like the foundation nutrition, and then move to nutrient timing, then move to supplements. Like we've got to do that strategically. And that's why I set up a system so it would guarantee more success than just trying to pick all these pieces out from social media and friends and training partners and whatever. So hopefully this has been super, super valuable. Please reach out to me. You can go to the Energy Performance website. You can find my contact information. If you have any questions, I'm here for you. Thanks so much for listening.